already the 8th of March. Time flies.
Indeed.
But I wonder why boys give girls flowers on this day and flowers expensive.
It's International Women's Day. Giving flowers to your female close one is a way of showing respect and love towards them.
I don't get it. Why do people celebrate the International Women's Day? Where did it start? Why the 8th of March? There's a bunch of questions in my head right now.
Well, if you're wondering the exact same thing as Bao, make sure to keep watching to get a much better understanding of this special day.
Every year, on the 8th of March, International Women's Day is celebrated across the globe. It's a day to recognize female achievement and a call to action, encouraging everyone to stand up for women's rights and gender equality. You may be thinking the same as Bao. Why is this day so important? So, to explain this, we're moving to a quite cheapy part of this video, the history of International Women's Day. Throughout history, women have had to fight for the freedom and rights we enjoy today. 150 years ago, women couldn't vote, stand in parliament, receive proper medical attention, own property, access fair legal support, get paid the same as men, visit the same public areas as men, get a proper education. The list goes on. 150 years ago, people lived in a very different world to what we know now. So, how did things change? To unravel the true history of Women's Day, we need to go back over 100 years. The first hints of it appeared around 1900. In 1903, Emmeline Pankhurst formed Women's Social and Political Union. This led to years of protests, rallies, and strikes of women. By 1907, the International Conference of Socialist Women, led by Clara Zetkin, a German Marxist from the German Social Democratic Party, took place. One of her primary goals was to get women into work. At that conference, they demanded
the right to universal female suffrage without qualifications of property, tax, education, or any other kind of barrier which may hinder members of the working class from availing themselves of their political rights.
Across the ocean in the US, the Socialist Party and the Women's National Committee had declared the first Women's Day. On the 28th of February in 1909, in New York City, women marched through the streets and protested for better pay and working conditions. Following this, a second International Conference of Working Women came together in 1910. Clara Zetkin pushed the idea of an International Women's Day, a day every year and in every country where women could organize and press for equal rights. After an unanimous vote, International Women's Day was born. In 1912, the Lawrence Textile Strike, better known as the Bread and Roses Strike, took place in the US. During a speech of a socialist and feminist called Rose Schneiderman, she said,
"The worker must have bread, but she must have roses too."
In other words, workers need more than just wages to survive. The bread. They also need dignity and decent working standards, roses. But then in 1914, the First World War took place. Political demonstrations across Europe, including Women's Day, were cracked down on to keep the peace on the home front. To oppose this war, Clara Zetkin organized the final Socialist Women's Conference in April 1915. However, the war went on despite all the efforts of these women. But the idea of Women's Day also went on. By 1917, the number of women working in factories had skyrocketed, as men marched off the war. The women replacing them were paid half as much. On top of this, women found themselves mostly working with long hours and horrific working conditions. Therefore, on International Women's Day 1917, women took to the streets to protest their mistreatments. In 1918, the Representation of the People Bill was passed, giving women the right to vote. However, it was only some women of a certain age and circumstance. In 1921, Clara Zetkin, in the Second International Conference of Communist Women in Moscow, stated that the 8th of March would now be the official date. In 1928, all women over 21 were finally allowed to vote. International Women's Day remained a major holiday only celebrated in socialist countries up until the 1970s. But feminists brought the celebration back and gave it a new meaning in the West as the women's movement grew. In 1975, the UN officially celebrated International Women's Day on the 8th of March. International Women's Day is now an official holiday in many countries. Along with the National Women's Day of Vietnam, the 20th of October, the International Women's Day is also considered a big day for celebrating women's worth. On this occasion, Vietnamese women usually receive care and honor in different ways, but the most popular one is being given roses, cards, and greetings. In addition, a number of activities are organized to honor women. For example, many agencies and companies hold ceremonies for female employees. Another example is that supermarkets and shopping malls launch promotional campaigns targeting women with discounted items or prices.
So there are a lot of activities actually. One more thing that I want to know, we are celebrating this day to honor Vietnamese women's values, specific